What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about the Detroit Lions defense for 2020 and why it will be better. I'm not just saying that. I'm going to be showing you reasons why the Lions will be better in 2020 and also what maybe went wrong in 2019. We're kind of adding on to that from a video we did before. So let's get it started. Welcome in, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. And today, yes, we're talking about this defense once again, man. I got a lot of time to look at this Detroit Lions defense, and that was probably the biggest question mark after last season, and still right now is the biggest question mark for a lot of people is Matt Patricia as a head coach. And when things go wrong defensively, you usually point to coaches. And when you look at your head coach being a defensive-minded coach, all of a sudden he's going to get a lot of blame. And all of a sudden schemes going to be talked about, whether or not he should blitz more, players we need to bring in, whatever it may be, there's going to be a lot of talk around the head coach because defense statistically was really bad last season, and it's pretty obvious that it did hold us back from winning a few games in the second half of the season that maybe our backups could have had wins with. Obviously, our quarterback was our starting quarterback, but we still maybe could have won a few games if our defense was a little bit better. However, I wanted to go back and watch and continue to watch some of these games. So I did a video like this before, and I talked about what probably went wrong in 2019. I made a couple of points, about how the relationships were at and stuff like that. But today, we're mainly focusing on-field problems, like players on the field problems that we had that came up over and over and over again. I'm seeing these things like, what the heck is going on here? And why I think the Lions improved in a lot of these positions, okay? So I'm going to be showing you guys a lot of clips as I talk. So yeah, man, let's just hop right in this thing. We got a lot of things to talk about. We're going to try to cover them quick. However, keep in mind, there's probably going to be more parts to this kind of series that we're doing. I wouldn't even call it a series. It's just stuff to talk about with the Detroit Lions defense. And it's really entertaining. Like for me, I'm trying to learn more about the scheme and how Matt Patricia does things because I feel like there's a reason to why he doesn't blitz, right? There's things that he believes in, and he's talking about how every scheme can be successful. And we've seen every different scheme be successful. So for me personally, I don't think it's a scheme problem. And I'm also going to be showing you guys why I believe that in this video as well, because I think a lot of people look at the defense and say it's bad because our scheme is wrong, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I watched this and I'm saying it's not the scheme's problem. The problem with this Detroit Lions defense is not scheme. There's definitely a lot more than just that. I think the scheme can work. We've seen it work. And it works at times. Even last season, when you watch them, you see it work a lot. But I think there was just a few little problems here that can be fixed. I mean, I think this defense is a lot closer than it looks because if you simply look at, Lions stats from 2019 defensively, you're going to see a lot of passing yards allowed. You're going to see a lot of total yards allowed. You're going to see a lot of points allowed and a pretty good amount of rushing yards allowed. And you're going to say this defense is terrible. It is a scheme problem. However, if you go back and watch the games, which is definitely to me more important than just simply looking at stats, it's a lot deeper than just that the scheme is bad because I think the scheme is going to work and I think it's going to take off in 2020 and he's going to come out of nowhere and some people are going to be shocked like, I didn't know Matt Patricia was about this. I'm telling you guys, I don't know if it'll be one of the best in the league, but I think it's going to definitely be a lot better than last season and some people may be surprised a little bit by that. Well, let's start off with one of the main stats that I do want to point out before we really get into the film because there is one little stat that I did want to point out here and that is against the run. One of the things Matt Patricia is all about is rushing the football. He wants physical play. He wants to be able to run the ball and to stop the run. Those are the two things he focuses on first. No matter who he's playing, he always brings up that we have to stop the run first. So let's talk about that run defense a little bit. We know the Lions have done what they can, and they're continuing to try to improve that rushing game offensively. But defensively, last year, we didn't have that good stats, I would say, defensively against the run, at least in terms of rushing yards allowed. However, one stat that we have to make sure we look at is rushing yards per attempt allowed. Because if you don't look at that, then you really don't know how efficient a team is against your team rushing the football, right? Things can be skewed, right? These numbers can obviously be skewed. We talked about it before. But this is a way more efficient way to look at numbers than just simply yards. Because if a team keeps running the football over and over and over against you, yes, the yards will eventually add up, but they may not be doing it very effectively. And if you look at the Lions in their yards per attempt allowed defensively against the run, they actually finished 12th in the league, right? They only gave up 4.1 yards per attempt, which is pretty good. I mean, it's not great. It's pretty good, though. It's top half, and the Lions didn't have a lot of stats defensively that were in the top half of the league. So when I show you that, I guess the run defense wasn't that bad. And it doesn't surprise me too much because when you watch them, sure, against some teams, they struggle against the run. But a lot of times, they would play some of the top running backs in the league. And yes, maybe they don't have the best offensive line, but people will be concerned. And the Lions pretty much shut them down. I mean, Zeke Elliott is probably the best example of a guy that basically did nothing against the Lions' rush defense. And it was one of those guys that people were afraid, like, oh my gosh, Zeke is going to run all over us. And then he didn't. And that's something that I've praised Matt Patricia for ever since he came in. There's certain teams and certain players and, that we go against. And there's always that big concern. And sometimes they make it happen. But other times, you see Matt Patricia, and he's really ready for it. He seems to be prepared for every single different opponent we play against, right? The Chiefs, a passing team, allowed 0 passing touchdowns. No other team did that. There's certain teams we play against that he has game plans for. The Patriots, he had a game plan to stop them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you do see at times it does work. And teams like the Cowboys, even the Giants with Saquon, certain good teams with really good running backs, like some of the best in the league, you expect them to just run all over us, and then they don't. And they're kind of like, whoa. Didn't expect that to happen, but it gets really overshadowed by the fact that we still lose that game. We won the Giants game, but it still gets overshadowed by a lot of different things. So I did want to point out the rush defense first. Now, let's talk about some players that continue to pop off to me that I was like, this is a really big problem. And then I see the Lions improved in that area this offseason. They made it an effort to go fix that positional group. Because one thing I talked about in my last video when we talked about the defense was the best way I think to look at where the Lions think the problem is, because they never really come out and say what their problem is defensively. They look at it and go see, okay, where they spend money? Where did they use their draft capital? If that's a certain place, spend a lot of money in one position and use draft picks there, that's probably where they think a problem is defensively, where they need to improve, whether that's because it's a problem between guys in the locker room or it's just on the field. And today we're really talking about on the field things, and a lot of these problems that I see the Lions addressed this offseason. And the first one is Rashaan Melvin. Now, while I did like the Rashaan Melvin signing because he was cheap and he ended up being a starter for us, which honestly I think most teams would take that, he probably shouldn't have never been a starter for the Detroit Lions. Like, he would have been a really good rotational cornerback for sure, like as a 4th. But as a number 2 with not a lot of pass rush, didn't work out the best. Now, I will give him credit. I did think he was really good at tackling, but man, this guy was a problem in the back end. And the stats weren't terrible, but when you watched him, man, it's just like, it was such timely big plays this guy would give up. We get teams in third downs, and boom, all of a sudden, Rashaan Melvin would get beat. This guy, I don't know if it's just because he's a little slower, maybe he's a little older. For man-to-man defense, this is not the guy that I necessarily want on the field. I think he's a solid player, but he's not a solid he's not a number 2 cornerback that I want. He is not the number 2 cornerback that I want on the field for man-to-man defense, and you could see that. You could see that teams would attack him, when in doubt, attack Rashaan Melvin, and a lot of times it was successful. He was just he was a solid, I would say he was an okay cornerback, but he wasn't good, right? This was definitely a problem, and the Lions, this should have not been their number 2 cornerback. It was kind of just someone, a placeholder for the year. And when you look at where the Lions spent their money and their draft capital this offseason, we see Desmond Trufant sign. And some people say, well, hey, Desmond Trufant's stats are pretty comparable. Well, to me, they're not. Because one, he had 4 interceptions. Rashaan Melvin didn't do that in 9 games. And 2, the reason they're not comparable is because Desmond Trufant's playing against the number 1 wide receiver, not the number 2. We have Darius Slay. When Desmond Trufant plays, he's playing against the best wide receiver game in and game out. That's way different than playing against the second best. There can sometimes be a really big drop off there. I mean, look at the Bears, for example, there's a drop off. Look at the Packers, there's a drop off. So for me, when I look at Desmond Trufant, I think he's a major upgrade from Rashaan Melvin. And then also, obviously, Jeffrey Okudah, who was kind of the Slay replacement. Slay wasn't bad last season. I hate that people say Slay was trash. Slay was not trash last season. I don't know what you're watching. He wasn't great. He wasn't Darius. He wasn't big play Slay, but he wasn't trash. But yes, I think that was a huge upgrade for the Lions, because Rashaan Melvin, while I'm grateful for what he did with the Lions, he wasn't good. He wasn't that good for us. He was just okay. He could get by, and that was a big problem for us because a lot of timely plays were given up through Rashaan Melvin. You couldn't just stick him out there man-to-man, and if we got not that much pressure and if he had to cover a guy for a couple seconds, he was usually a guy that teams could attack consistently, and he would get beat. So that's one of the big problems. He really couldn't keep up with. He couldn't cover tight ends, man. It was a big problem for Rashaan Melvin for sure. So I think that's one place the Lions upgraded, and I think that's a big reason the Lions defense will be better in 2020. We know it's all about man-to-man. They played tons of man. They played the most man last season. They're not going to blitz that much. They haven't blitzed that much. Maybe they will next season. I don't know. Either way, I think this is a huge upgrade for the Detroit Lions. The next thing I have is Jarrett Davis. Coverage linebackers. When I look at the Lions scheme and I continue to learn more about this scheme, it's really interesting to see what Patricia does defensively. We know he doesn't blitz a lot, but how is he going to get pressure? Because he understands you got to get pressure. If you're not going to blitz, you got to find a way to get pressure. And some teams, they run a 4-3 and they get 4 of the best defensive linemen they can. They just rock with those guys. Matt Patricia, the Patriots, they do it a little bit different. They really utilize their linebackers. And when we watch the Detroit Lions and how they utilize their linebackers, it's actually really cool to watch. Not only their linebackers, even their defensive linemen. The front 7 is continuously moving. I mean, you'll see Trey Flowers one time play an interior defensive lineman. Sometimes you'll see him out there on the edge. You'll see Ashawn, when Ashawn was here, who's usually a defensive tackle, play on the outside sometimes, standing up. This guy was standing up on the outside of a defense because he could bull rush an offensive tackle depending on a certain situation. This defensive line was always moving around. And then if you look at the linebacker position, what's really cool about this position is that this is really one one of the most important positions on this team for Matt Patricia, because the linebacker position needs to be so aware of everything going on, and then they have to be skilled at multiple things. You have to be able to play man coverage, you have to be very, very aware, and you have to be able to tackle, you have to have athleticism, you have to have everything. You have to be a really good linebacker to fit in this defense and be good in this defense. And you watch a guy like Jarrad Davis, he has the physical tools to do that. The problem with Jarrad Davis is his awareness is really lacking. If he knows where he has to go and where he has to be, he's okay. When he gets lost, that's where big problems, and that's again where big plays occur. Because his defense, for the most part, if you watch him, you would say, hey, this defense doesn't look like one of the worst in the league. However, it's timely mistakes that go wrong. And I'm talking about the second half of the season when the Lions defense really fell off. Timely mistakes. He's got the tools, and when he knows where he has to be, because what the linebackers do, at least the two interior linebackers, they will show blitz and they'll get up near the line because it makes the guards respect that they could be coming to the quarterback. And since they have to respect that, they can't go out there and block a defense end. They can't go double team Trey Flowers because they don't know if the linebacker's going to come. Because if they double team the end, linebackers have a free shot for a sack. And the Lions linebackers, you know that, and they're smart and they can recognize that. So since the guards have to be aware of that, sometimes they can kind of double team the tackle, defense tackle, and kind of watch the linebacker at the same time. But they usually have to be really ready for that. So that leaves Trey Flowers 101. That leaves your Romeo Corres 101. And to me, if you think Trey Flowers overpaid, you're crazy, okay? This dude is a monster. The 7.5 sacks do not do justice to how good this player is. I mean, you can watch this guy. He's beating some of the best tackles in the game. This dude is really impressive. He's strong. He's really quick. He's got great moves. Trey Flowers is a problem, dude. I'm glad we paid this guy $90 million. He is worth the $90 million, and he's going to start showing people, okay, you just got to go watch his game. You got to go watch his games, man. This dude is worth the money for sure. So, linebacker position is very important. Again, while I don't think Jarrad Davis was bad, he just doesn't have that great awareness in pass coverage. And that's not what he was drafted for. So he's really trying to fit into that. But what the linebackers will do is they pretty much have three roles. Either they're going to blitz, or they're going to drop and play quarterback spy, or they're going to take on a passing route. And since the Lions play a lot of man-to-man, one of the most well-known man-to-man beaters is a crossing route. If you run crossing routes against man-to-man, you're usually going to eat up. You're usually going to eat. So underneath crossing routes is where a lot of teams try to attack the Lions. So Matt Patricia knows this. He's not going to just guess every time they're in a crossing route, and he's going to be like, okay, switch the zone, because you can't do that. Since he loves to play man-to-man so much, he needs to find a way to kind of, go against that. And the way he does that is with his linebacker play. His linebackers get up close to the line. Sometimes they'll drop, sometimes they'll come, sometimes they'll sit. But what they'll do is the linebackers will, there's usually two interior linebackers. One of them may take away the running back if he goes out in a route. The other one will take away a crossing route. So if a crossing route comes from a wide receiver, they're usually going to have a step because it's nearly impossible to cover that corner. Linebacker will take him and follow. Sometimes the cornerback will stay. Sometimes the cornerback will dip out like a safety. They'll take on something else. That's usually what the linebackers will do. And then sometimes they'll blitz. They run stunts. They do things like that. So Matt Patricia is not really usually bringing more than 5 guys, but at times he can't get pressure. He doesn't get tons of pressure, but he can at times, and he really needs those linebackers to be able to be aware of what is going on. I think Jarrad Davis isn't completely terrible. He's not super fast, but it's the awareness that is the big problem. And you brought in Jamie Collins, who is known as one of the better pass coverage guys, who is very versatile to move around all the linebacker positions. And that's why I say Jamie Collins is the best Lions free agent signing, because he's the best player we brought in. He can do it all. And Jamie Collins is an absolute monster. And when it comes to coverage, he's going to be big for us. He's great with his awareness. So that's another reason the Lions defense will improve, okay? I'm not just saying that you brought in this guy, you're going to be better. There's reasons the Lions defense can be better. Aside on that point, one problem the Lions had last season was tackles. The Lions had so many missed tackles. It was like, dude, you can't miss as many tackles. Jarrad Davis missed, I think, 13.7% of his tackles. As a team, we had 127 missed tackles, which was 5th in the league. Matt Patricia brings up fundamentals over and over, and we're like, why do we keep bringing the fundamentals? This is why. 127 missed tackles. We're missing sacks from defensive linemen. Defensive linemen are missing sacks on the quarterback. That can't happen. A sack is a game changer. A sack can end a drive. And when you miss a sack, even if the quarterback just throws it away, it changes the outcome of that entire drive. You have to be able to finish off those plays. You're 5th in penalties. You got a lot of penalties. You got a lot of young guys, but still, good teams can have a lot of penalties. We've seen it before. So that one, not too big for me. Another big problem, 3rd down conversions. When I say timely mistakes from this defense, we're good and we look really good, and then bang, all of a sudden we make a big mistake. 3rd downs, we're attacking the weaknesses. Teams attack our weakness. Another one of our weaknesses, Tracy Walker. Not bad. Tracy Walker's really good, and he took a really big step for us. I mean, this guy is 2 years in the league. He's going on his 3rd year. He's got a lot of potential. And maybe it's 1 year after that. I don't know. Either way, he's got a lot of potential. But he was thrown into a very big role if the Lions traded with Quandre Diggs. They're like, hey, you got to be our guy. You got to take over this major role. And he did good with it. He wasn't the best. Sometimes he'd struggle against guys like Fitzgerald, Evan Ingram, but he was okay. He was a good tackler. He was solid in pass coverage. He'll get better. So what did the Lions do to improve that? Where a lot of teams that attacked last season when they had a tight end on the safety, they attacked Tracy Walker. Lions bring in Duron Harmon, a proven veteran, which can move Tracy Walker, can help him out, give him another veteran to learn from, a really good coverage guy in the back end, which again goes to my point of third down conversions. You allowed 43.9% of third downs to be converted for a first down. That's 29th in the league. Nearly half of the third downs teams are converting. That's not good. How are you going to get off the field if half the time a team is converting a third down? That's awful. So you got to be able to get off the field, and that's why I said it's a big problem for the Lions. You can see when you watch them, and you can see the numbers. They both back it up, is that the Lions can play good defense, and then bang, all of a sudden they attack one of our weaknesses. Okay, young Tracy Walker, who again, I think he's got great potential. I think he's going to break out next year as a breakout player for 2020. You look at Rashaan Melvin, just wasn't the best man coverage guy. He was just solid. You look at Jared Davis, some of the linebackers, they would get lost trying to cover tight ends, running backs, they would get lost in those jobs. Those are places that teams would attack, and if you look at all those positions, Lions upgraded. Duron Harmon, Jamie Collins, somewhat Reggie Ragland, Elijah Lee a little bit. You know, you addressed those positions this offseason, right? Cornerback, Desmond Trufant, Jeffrey Okudah. Okay, you addressed all those positions that really hurt you last season. And watching the Lions defense, this defense isn't that far off. The scheme works. The scheme is not just, oh, hey, this is trash, I have no idea what we're doing. Every scheme can work. This scheme will work if the Lions get the right guys built for this. And they are building that. They can stop the run. They showed last year 12th in yards per attempt allowed, which isn't that bad. They're getting better. It's something that Matt Patricia prides himself on. He brought in Danny Shelton to try to improve that because Snacks wasn't great last season. He should improve that, right? You brought in some new front seven guys, some more run stoppers. But the big problems, those are some of the main problems I took away. So for me, this defense is close. And if you guys want to see another episode of this where we talk about Lions defense, I can. I got a lot to say because this defense is really close. It's not a scheme problem. The Lions had a couple of positions that need to improve on. The Lions had injuries at the cornerback position last year. And once they had those injuries, now you're relying on Michael Ford, Rashaan Melvin, and Justin Coleman as your three corners. That's okay, but those are not your starters. Those can't be starters. But what do the Lions have now? All of a sudden, people are like, oh my gosh, are we going to stop bringing in corners? No, we're not. We can bring in more. Because the thing is, if players go down, we have starter level material. And I didn't always realize that, but now I realize that that's what Patricia is doing. He's got Okudah. He's got Desmond Trufant. Why get Okudah if you have Trufant? Well, because now Amani can be a guy that comes in that, hey, if someone goes down, Amani's out there. That's a starting corner. Amani can be a starting corner. All right? You got Justin Coleman slot. You got Daryl Roberts who started before. You got guys that are proven in the back end, so things happen. If you go out multiple wide receiver sets, you put 5 DBs on the field at once. You have the guys built for that. The safety position is deep. The Lions, man, this defense is close. This defense is going to be much better. May not want to be one of the best. I'm not going to say it's going to be top 5 at everything. It's going to be much better, and I think it's going to shock some people because it doesn't have to be great because our offense can be great if Stafford is healthy, but it will be better in 2020. This is another reason why. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.